Elon Musk destroys a TV host. His response leaves America in shock. Imagine yourself sitting in front of the screen, witnessing a showdown like never before. On one side, Elon Musk, a tech visionary, the man who dares to challenge every limit. On the other, Olivia Reed, a razor-sharp journalist known for making even the most powerful guests sweat. But just when everyone thought Musk was trapped, he did something no one expected. The studio fell silent, the host was visibly shaken, and the audience held its breath. Musk didn't just defend himself, he turned the entire game upside down. What did he say that left the host struggling for control? What revelation made millions rethink the world around them? And most importantly, what lesson can you take from this confrontation? This is not just an interview, this is a moment of awakening. The studio lights blazed down, casting a cold blue hue over the stage. Massive cameras were positioned at multiple angles, ready to capture even the smallest expressions of the two central figures. The air was thick with tension. Tonight was not an ordinary interview. It wasn't a friendly discussion about technology or groundbreaking innovations, but a battle of intellects. At the center of the stage sat Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized electric vehicles, space travel, and global communication. He sat quietly in a sleek, black leather chair, his expression calm yet piercingly deep, a stillness that no one could shake. He knew this was more than just an interview, it was a challenge. Seated across from him in an identical chair was Olivia Reed, one of the most powerful journalists in America, known for her razor-sharp approach. She never shied away from asking the toughest questions and never offered her guests an easy escape. Behind them, the massive screen lit up, displaying the bold title of the show, Truth Uncovered. The studio audience sat on the edge of their seats, eyes locked on the two figures in the spotlight. They could feel it was different. Something extraordinary was about to unfold, something people would talk about for days to come. Behind the cameras, the show's producer clutched a headset, giving rapid instructions to the crew. Everything had to be perfect. There was no room for mistakes. The countdown echoed through the studio speakers. 3, 2, 1. A sudden flood of light illuminated the two figures, silencing the room. Olivia Reed picked up a stack of documents, fixing her gaze on her guest. She offered a faint smile, but it was not one of warmth. It was sharp, calculated, like a blade honed to perfection. She took a deep breath before speaking, her voice low yet commanding, like a judge preparing to open a high-profile trial. Elon Musk, thank you for joining us today. Musk tilted his head slightly, the corner of his lips curling into a subtle, knowing smirk. I have a feeling this conversation is going to be interesting. The battle had officially begun. The atmosphere in the studio thickened. Olivia Reed leaned forward slightly, her eyes sharp as a scalpel. She had no intention of wasting time on pleasantries. From the very first second, she would put Musk on the defensive. Elon Musk, you are a genius, a visionary. No one can deny that. She paused, flipping through the stack of documents on the desk as if verifying her next words. But lately, people don't describe you that way anymore. She let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing, her voice unwavering. Instead, they call you a troublemaker, reckless, a man willing to break decades-old rules just because you believe you're right. You fired thousands of employees after taking over Twitter. You've publicly criticized influential figures, and some believe you are using your power to manipulate public opinion. She stopped, then, with pinpoint focus, looked him straight in the eye. What do you have to say about that? She paused, then, locking eyes with Musk, repeated her question with deliberate sharpness. What do you have to say about that? A question that allowed no escape. The audience held its breath. They waited for Musk's reaction. Some expected him to defend himself, to explain, to soften the accusations. But Musk didn't do any of that. He didn't rush to answer. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if carefully assessing the question, and then, rather than refuting or justifying himself, he responded with a question of his own. "Olivia, you said people call me a troublemaker, but I have to ask, who exactly are these people you're referring to?" For a brief moment, the studio seemed to shift. Olivia hesitated just for a fraction of a second, and a murmur rippled through the audience. Musk had just done something no one expected. He didn't defend himself. He didn't try to win approval. He challenged the very way the media operated. Olivia pressed her lips together, but maintained her professional demeanor. She couldn't let Musk take control of the conversation so early. "I mean, the public, the people who once admired you but are now questioning your true motives." Musk nodded gently, his composure unshaken. "The public, or what they've been told to believe?" This time it wasn't just Olivia who hesitated. A few audience members exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. Musk's words weren't just answers. They were challenges, forcing people to think. Olivia straightened in her seat, determined to regain control. She let out a faint, calculated smirk. "Elon, don't tell me you're suggesting that some unseen force is controlling the information we receive." Her voice carried a trace of mockery, as if she were luring Musk into a trap. But Musk didn't take the bait. He leaned back slightly, his gaze steady, unwavering. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just asking questions. And I think that's something we all should be doing." A heavy silence filled the studio. Not the silence of tension, but the silence of realization. Olivia knew she couldn't continue with the usual approach. She needed a stronger strike. She glanced down at the stack of papers in front of her, flipping to another page. "All right then, let's talk about what you've actually done after taking over Twitter. You made massive changes. Some say they were necessary reforms, but others claim you created chaos. A platform that once had clear moderation rules has now become a place where anyone can say anything." She locked eyes with him. "Do you take responsibility for that?" Another direct hit. Musk didn't flinch. He took a deep breath, then leaned forward. His voice was calm, but carried undeniable weight. "I believe in personal responsibility. I believe that people should have the right to determine what is true rather than being forced to accept a single, controlled version of the truth." He paused, letting his words settle before continuing. "Because history has taught us one undeniable lesson. When a small group controls the truth, it ceases to be the truth. It becomes power." A few members of the audience nodded in agreement. Others remained silent, processing what they had just heard. Olivia realized that Musk wasn't just answering questions. He was challenging the very foundation of the discussion, raising a much bigger question for all of America. And she couldn't let that continue. She straightened up, tightening her grip on the table. This interview was only just beginning. But it was no longer an ordinary conversation. The tension in the studio swelled like a rising storm. Olivia Reed knew she couldn't allow Elon Musk to seize control of the conversation. His words didn't just refute her questions, they shifted the balance of power, putting her on the defensive. That couldn't happen. She adjusted her posture quickly, flipping to the next page in her notes, and fired a sharper, more challenging question. Challenge question number 1. Are you really a defender of free speech? You claim to protect free speech, yet you decide who gets to speak on your platform and who doesn't. Olivia's voice was steady, but her gaze was razor-sharp. You overhauled Twitter's moderation policies, fired thousands of employees, so tell me, what makes you any different from the very people you criticize? A direct attack. The audience turned their attention to Musk, sensing a critical moment. This was a question that could put him in a difficult position, But Musk showed no sign of worry. He leaned back in his chair, his expression calm yet piercing. "Sophia, you're right about one thing. I do have control over the platforms I own." He paused, letting his words settle into the room. Then he leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "But what makes me different from them? They control what information you're allowed to see. I simply give people the freedom to see everything, the things they agree with and the things they don't." A slight murmur spread through the audience. "But truth does not fear scrutiny," Musk added, his voice dropping slightly. "Only lies need censorship." A chill ran through the studio, the direct hit. The audience turned to Musk. This was a question that could back him into a corner, but Musk showed no signs of unease. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze calm yet razor-sharp. "Sophia, you are right about one thing. I do have control over the platforms I own." He paused for a moment, letting his words settle into the air. Then he leaned forward slightly, his eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. "But what's the difference between me and them? They control what information you are allowed to see. I simply give people the freedom to access all perspectives, both the ones they agree with and the ones they don't." He let the weight of his words sink in before delivering the final blow. "The truth does not fear scrutiny. Only lies require censorship." A chill ran through the studio. Olivia bit the inside of her lip. Musk's response wasn't just sharp, it placed her in a difficult position. If she kept pushing for moderation, the audience might begin to wonder, was she defending the power to control information? She needed to pivot fast. She quickly flipped through her notes, ready to launch another strike. Challenge question number 2. Do you take responsibility for the consequences of your actions? Let's talk about consequences. Olivia's voice slowed, each word carefully calculated. "Since you took over Twitter, misinformation has surged. Certain extremist groups now have a larger platform to amplify their views." She locked eyes with Musk. "Do you take responsibility for that?" Another direct hit. The studio tensed. The audience leaned in, waiting for Musk's response. But Musk didn't flinch. He took a deep breath, then spoke with steady confidence. "Your question is built on a flawed assumption, Olivia. You assume that more voices being heard is inherently a bad thing." A long silence filled the studio. "You speak of misinformation, but who decides what is true and what is false? The government, the media, or a select group of so-called experts?" Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but Musk subtly raised his hand, signaling he wasn't finished. "Let's look at history," he continued, his voice calm yet piercing. "How many times have we been told something was absolute truth, only to find out years later that it was completely false?" He leaned back, his tone turning cold and deliberate. "We were once told that smoking was good for our health. We were once told there was no need to worry about a financial crisis right before it happened. And how many other truths have been overturned over time?" The studio fell silent. A few audience members furrowed their brows, lost in thought. "I'm not saying misinformation doesn't exist," Musk continued. "But the real question is, who gets to decide what truth is? If you hand that power to a small group of elites, how can you be certain they won't abuse it?" Olivia knew she had to strike immediately. If she hesitated, she would lose control of the conversation entirely. Challenge question number 3. Are you manipulating the public? She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Elon, you claim to be fighting for transparency, but let's be honest, you're one of the most influential figures in the world. How can you be certain that you're not manipulating public opinion for your own benefit?" This time, the audience didn't murmur. They simply waited, holding their breath, eager to see Musk's reaction. He held Olivia's gaze for a long moment, then let out a small, knowing smile. "I'm not asking the public to believe me," he said calmly. "I just want them to think for themselves." He lowered his voice, but each word carried undeniable weight. "If I'm wrong, prove me wrong with reason, not with censorship." Then he turned toward the camera as if addressing the millions of viewers watching at home. Ask questions. Don't accept something just because it comes from a so-called trusted source. Seek the truth. Think for yourself, because if you allow someone else to control your thoughts, you are no longer a free citizen. You are merely a puppet. Olivia clenched her jaw. She could feel the momentum slipping away, but she refused to let the debate end like this. She had one last card to play. Taking a deep breath, she delivered her final strike, her voice sharp as the last weapon in a warrior's hand. "Elon, you're painting a deeply cynical picture of the world, but if everything is as bad as you claim, if power is truly being manipulated as you say, then the real question is, do we still have hope?" The entire studio held its breath. This was no longer just another question. It was a question that could change the way millions of people viewed the world. Musk locked eyes with Olivia. The mockery and defiance were gone, and what remained was something deeper. The air in the studio felt frozen. Everyone knew this was the moment that would decide everything. Olivia Reed had thrown every challenging question she had, but Elon Musk remained unfazed. Instead, he had countered, flipped the narrative, and turned this interview into something far more profound. A conversation that would be remembered for years to come. But Olivia couldn't let Musk walk away victorious that easily. She needed a decisive blow. She took a deep breath, placed her pen on the table, and leaned back in her chair. Her voice, once sharp and aggressive, now lowered into something even more dangerous, calm, controlled, and lethal. "Elon, you've spoken at length about power and the control of information, but I want to ask you one final question, one that perhaps even you have never faced before." Her piercing gaze locked onto his. Musk didn't flinch. He simply waited. Olivia leaned forward, her words deliberate and heavy with meaning. "What if one day you become the very thing you warn us about?" A hush fell over the studio. Some audience members sat up straighter, others turned to each other, whispering in hushed voices. This wasn't just another question. It was a direct challenge, a strike at the very core of Musk's philosophy. And Olivia wasn't done. "You talk about the dangers of manipulated power, you warn us about the risks of a small elite controlling the truth, but look at yourself, Elon. You are no ordinary businessman. You don't own just one company. You own multiple companies that shape our economy, our technology, even our way of thinking." She listed them one by one. Tesla, revolutionizing transportation. SpaceX, taking humanity to the stars. Starlink, controlling global internet access. X, one of the most influential social platforms in the world. Olivia let those names hang in the air before continuing. "Have you ever stopped to ask yourself if you are becoming exactly what you fear? A man with too much power, too much influence? Who holds you accountable, Elon? And if one day you change, if you become the very force you claim to fight against, who will stop you?" There was no escaping this question. The stage lights felt harsher. The silence in the room was deafening. All eyes were on Musk, but he remained still. He didn't smirk, he didn't scoff, he simply sat there, staring back at Olivia with an unreadable expression. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he leaned back in his chair, slowly intertwined his fingers, and in a voice quieter than before but heavier with depth, he responded, "Olivia, that is a very good question, and it's one I ask myself every single day," a response no one expected. Olivia blinked momentarily, caught off guard, not because she doubted his words, but because she never imagined Musk would admit to such a thought. "And I will say this," Musk continued, his voice steady, his eyes sharper than ever, Not as a defense, but as a reminder to everyone listening. He turned his gaze toward the camera, speaking directly to the millions of people watching. I am not perfect. I don't have all the answers. But there is one thing I do know. The difference between someone who protects the truth and someone who abuses power isn't in how much power they have. It's in whether they allow others to question them. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping lower but carrying even greater weight. The day I stop allowing people to question me, the day I use my influence to silence those who disagree with me, that is the day I have become what I once warned against. A long pause followed. No one knew what to say. Olivia Reed, one of the most formidable interviewers, a woman who had never once hesitated in a debate, sat in silence, her fingers gently tightening against the desk. But what left her speechless wasn't the feeling of defeat. It was the realization that this conversation wasn't over. She took a deep breath, regaining her composure, then she lifted her head and looked straight at Elon Musk. Elon, it seems that tonight we didn't just have an interview. She paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping across the audience, some thoughtful, some shaken, some deep in contemplation. Perhaps this is a conversation that all of us need to reflect on for a long time. Musk gave a slight nod but remained silent. Slowly, Olivia placed her pen on the table. The sharpness in her eyes had softened, replaced with something more reflective. A quiet acknowledgement of something she hadn't expected to realize. Then she turned toward the camera, facing the millions of viewers watching from their screens. Tonight, I had the opportunity to ask Elon Musk many questions, but perhaps the most important question didn't come from me. It comes from you. She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle in the minds of the audience. Are you asking yourself the right questions? All eyes in the studio locked onto her. We live in a world where information reaches us every day, every minute, every second. But how much of it is the truth? How much of it is simply what someone wants us to believe? And, most importantly, are we actively seeking the truth, or are we merely accepting what is placed before us? She turned back to Elon Musk and, after a brief hesitation, nodded. An unspoken recognition of the conversation that had just unfolded. I'm not saying that everything you said tonight is right, she offered a small, knowing smile before adding, but I also can't say that it's wrong. The entire studio held its breath this time. When Olivia spoke, her voice was no longer that of someone trying to win an argument. It was the voice of someone who had just realized something far more profound. So I leave this question with you, not just as viewers of this program, but as citizens of the world. She leaned slightly forward, her gaze unwavering. Are you willing to ask your own questions? Are you willing to seek the truth for yourself, rather than letting someone else decide what it is for you? She paused, tilting her head slightly to emphasize the gravity of the moment. This was no longer just a televised interview. This was an invitation, a challenge to everyone watching. Musk said nothing. He simply smiled. A knowing, thoughtful smile. Finally, he turned toward the camera, and this time his voice no longer carried the tone of debate. It carried something deeper. A message meant to linger. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm not asking you to agree with me. He paused, his words carrying weight, each syllable deliberate. I just want you to think. When someone tells you something, ask yourself, who is behind it? What do they stand to gain? And, most importantly, if someone is trying to stop you from hearing another perspective, why? Because the truth does not fear being questioned. Only lies need to be controlled. A simple statement, yet powerful enough to send a wave of silence through the entire studio. No applause, no murmurs, only deep reflection. Elon Musk slowly stood up, adjusting his jacket before leaving. He turned to look at Olivia Reed just for a moment, and in that instant something shifted between them. No longer an adversarial clash, but an acknowledgement. Olivia gave a subtle nod. Elon Musk walked away, and as the show faded to black, the story did not end, because this was never just a debate between two people. It was a question, one that each of us must answer for ourselves. As the screen darkened, a voice emerged, steady, calm, and inviting. This conversation does not end here. It has only just begun. A short pause, just long enough for the viewer to feel the gravity of what they had just witnessed. Then the voice continued, warmer now, more personal. How do you feel about what just happened? Leave a comment below. I truly want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Elon Musk, or do you believe the truth is more complicated? Share your perspective. The voice dipped slightly, almost as if leaning closer to the audience. And if you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to hit like so more people can see it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next videos, because we have many more conversations waiting for you. A slight smile, unseen but felt through the tone of the voice. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We'll see you in the next video. The screen faded to black, but the conversation was only just beginning in the comments. We have just witnessed a conversation unlike any other interview. She paused, allowing the audience a moment to reflect. You may agree with Elon Musk, you may not, but regardless of where you stand, there's one undeniable truth. She leaned forward, her voice lowering, carrying a new weight. We have become far too comfortable letting others decide what the truth is. The studio was silent. Olivia Reed locked eyes with the camera, as if speaking directly to every viewer watching from their screens. Well, I leave this question to you. When this program ends, will you return to your daily life, accepting whatever is placed in front of you without question, or will you start asking questions? Each word landed like a challenge. She leaned back, clasping her hands together, then let out a small smile. Not one of victory, but of realization. I'm not asking you to believe anyone, not me, not Elon Musk. I'm only asking you to start thinking for yourself. A deep silence filled the room. She glanced down at her notes. All the questions she had meticulously prepared, suddenly none of them seemed to matter anymore, because tonight she had found a more important question. She turned back to the camera, and this time her voice was softer, but carried more power than ever before. If tonight made you think, share your thoughts in the comments. She paused briefly, then emphasized her next words. Tell us what you think. Do you agree or disagree? And most importantly, are you willing to search for the answers yourself? Taking a deep breath, she ended with a simple yet profound statement. Because the truth is not something that is handed to you, it is something you must seek for yourself. The screen slowly faded to black. But this story is far from over, because this isn't just about Elon Musk, it's not just about an interview, it's about you and how you choose to see the world. The screen fades to black, but the voice continues. This conversation doesn't end here, it's only just beginning. A pause, long enough for the audience to absorb the weight of what they've just witnessed, then the voice returns, warmer, more sincere. How do you feel about everything that unfolded? Leave a comment below. I truly want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Elon Musk, or do you think the truth is more complicated? Share your perspective. The voice dropped slightly, like a quiet but meaningful reminder. And if you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to hit like so more people can be part of this conversation. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's coming next. Because we have so many more powerful stories waiting for you. A soft smile, not visible, but deeply felt through the words. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Thank you for being part of this dialogue. I'll see you in the next video.